Okay, everyone, welcome back to the How To Podcast series. I have another spectacular co-host joining me today, which makes me super happy. I'm tickled, I guess you could say that. Tonya is here with me today, a spectacular podcast host who has reached out, and we're going to co-host together today. Again, for those listening at home, it's not an interview. We're co-hosting. We're pals and buddies in podcasting, and today we want to talk about all things AI and podcasting. Ooh, here we go. Right? Tonya, welcome to the podcast.
We may have opened a can of worms with this one. We'll see.
Google is listening to us right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Busy day today as always, but I was looking forward to spending some time talking with you and just relaxing for a while here.
The beauty of having a co-hosted episode with another podcaster is Tonya has filled my inbox with ideas for today, and that is the joy of why we're here. This, again, is not an interview. We're doing this together because we want to help other podcasters with their show. We want to share our experiences, what we're learning in podcasting. By no means are we experts, but we do have some opinions of things we're doing, and we're trying stuff. So we're going to talk AI today, and before we do that, though, Tonya, I want you to talk about your show and your podcast and a little history about your show. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure. Thanks. So I host the Water Prairie Chronicles, and it's kind of an unusual name, I know. But if you think of hydroplaning, then you can picture water for hydro and planing for prairie. It was my son's interpretation when he was young. And Water Prairie is all about helping parents who have children with disabilities or learning disabilities or special needs of different types. And it came from my own family history. Both my children have disabilities, and they're both in college now. They're doing well. Both have supports, but we learned a lot parenting them as they were growing up. And so about a year and a half ago, I decided that I wanted to find a way to pass on what I've learned to other parents. So I started the podcast, and it includes interviews with adults who have grown up with disabilities, parents of children with special needs, organizations and professionals who work with special needs families. We're just trying to provide as much information out there for parents who are looking for guidance and for ideas and just support with community where maybe they're a little more isolated. They've never met anyone else that's faced the same challenges. So we're just trying to figure out a way to supply as much as we can out there for the next generation.
Amazing. And how long has the show been out?
It started in January of 22. So It's hard to believe it's been over a year and a half now. And I've come a long way, but I have a long way to go still, I think, in my knowledge realm, which is why I'm excited about talking to you about this because every time I talk to you, I learn more. So I feel like this is going to be a good exchange here.
Oh, now my heart's happy. So that was very nice of you to say.
There you go.
Okay. So if you were the beginning stages of your podcast, you don't have an episode out yet, and you stumbled across this podcast today, and you're listening to the two of us talk, it's a little surreal because you're listening to yourself in the future. But anyways,
Right.
If you were able to listen to a podcast, what would be some of the things looking back that you didn't know before episode 1 that you've learned or you're learning that you wish you could go back and just say, listen, I got to talk to you for 5 minutes. This is what you need to know. Is there any little tip you'd give to yourself before episode 1 that could have maybe helped you a little bit more?
I think a big piece that I've found really over the last year has been connecting with other podcasters.
Right.
Because, I started this, I did research. Full disclosure, I was not a podcast listener before I started a podcast.
What?
That probably was a big piece that I shouldn't have done. I was more into video. And but then my husband has been a diehard podcast listener. And so he kind of showed me that there is benefit to the audio side. And I'm actually hooked on it now. I listen to I don't know how many podcasts when I'm driving to and from work and all. But I would say listen to podcast and get an idea of what's out there. But talking to other podcasters and just getting that information from them and building a community around yourself so that you have people who understand. Because I don't know about you. I don't have friends and family who are podcasters. So as I face questions or, do you think this would work or something like that, I don't have anyone I can go and ask because they're giving me only feedback as a listener. They don't know the mechanics behind trying to do what I'm thinking of doing. And so talking to another podcaster helps a lot. And I think just finding that support, listening to things like what we're doing now, I think is a huge help just to be able to talk about those ins and outs of what we've learned. And so then you can maybe, you may still want to try what didn't work for me, but at least you have some idea of whether it worked or not for somebody else.
Yeah. I think if I could go back and talk to myself, I'd probably tell myself, you're going to meet probably the best people in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
By having time with them in your calendar. Like I've had time in people's calendars. I could not afford their hourly rate by any means. Like these people are so smart, so talented, so in demand, speak around the world. And here they are, willing and open to create space in their calendar to talk to me.
Right.
And I find it sometimes I'm so intimidated just by, I met somebody that's going to come on the show in the future. And when I pull up his website, I'm like, as featured on, and every station you can think of, every television show you can think of, he's like the go-to guy for interviews about podcasting. And I'm like, I had no idea until I pulled his website up and we had already confirmed our booking. And when he came on the screen, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I went and bought his book. I did everything. I'm like, I can't believe you're on my screen. He's like, David, nice to meet you. And I'm like, I'm having a moment here, right? It's so cool. So, but that's what I love. I love that. I would just love to sit down with myself and say, listen, I know it's going to be hard. There's going to be days where you don't want to do this. There's going to be frustrations. There's going to be expense. It's going to cost you money and time. And you're going to feel like you're talking to the wall. But there's going to be a day when you're going to meet somebody who's going to connect you with the next person, which will connect you with the next person. And your network's going to grow. Your community's going to grow. And there'll be this really cool moment when a listener reaches out to you for the first time and says, your podcast means this to me, and thank you. Yep. And that is probably one of the most surreal moments where you fall off your chair almost. You're like sharing it with everyone. Someone responded. There's a person out there that listened to the show. And that's exciting. And what happened to me today, just as a side, and I want to just take a second to thank the people listening. I just got an email from Good Pods, and out of 100 how-to podcasts in that category through Good Pods, our show just hit number 20 out of 100. And I got an email, and they're like, congratulations. That's great. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I look at all the other ones, and they're like top podcasts, and it's like as voted by the listeners. And I thought, wow, there it is. For me, that means so much because it comes from the people listening.
Yes.
Right. I didn't pay for this acknowledgement. I didn't hire somebody to get me there. It's just recording episodes, showing up, being there, and being consistent for my audience. And it made me so happy to know that there's someone out there listening.
Oh yeah.
So if I was back at the beginning, I'd be like, listen, just keep going. Don't stop, because something good is around the corner. And if you're listening and you're thinking, I've got 5 episodes and 3 listens, I don't even know if I'm doing it right or if I should continue. I just read somebody's post on Facebook today, and they're like, I got 20 episodes out. I don't feel like I'm making an impact. I think about packing it in, but I really love podcasting. And I'm like, oh, if that's you listening, listen to Tonya today and listen to her advice, because I think you're going to learn a lot just from our chat today. So again, Tonya, thank you for being here and being a part of this. I love having you here.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to add to what you were saying too. For that person that's thinking, I only have 20 downloads at this point. Think about too, why are we doing this? Are we,
right.
There's a lot of benefits there, but I don't know about you, but when I go into each episode, I'm thinking of one family that's searching right now. Like it may be, they just got a diagnosis for a baby and they don't know where to go. They don't know what's going next. Do I want a lot of people to hear it? Absolutely. I want a lot of people to hear it. But what I'm thinking about is that one family, because if I can connect with them and get them connected to the support that they need, then there was a purpose behind that episode. And it has never failed yet that I've somehow found out one person of every episode has somehow let me know that they were reached. And I appreciate it every time it comes in. I never know how it's going to be. And it's not always that person that I was thinking of. It'll be a psychologist that was listening to it because it reminded them of a family that they're trying to work with, and it helped them understand the parent's perspective better. Things like that I didn't even think about. But I think there's value in having these conversations, no matter what our topics are, whatever our platform is for our podcast. There are people out there who need to hear what we have to share.
Yeah.
And so if I focus is on not trying to help the masses, but trying to reach the single person in their car driving to work that's just listening because they finally, like me, learned that it's okay to listen to podcasts as you're driving to work.
Yeah.
then I think that's better than looking at your day-to-day stats, which are going to fluctuate as you go anyway.
Right. And that's a slippery slope to get in on. And, you know, it's good to know who's listening. It's good to see that your podcast is growing week to week and episode to episode. That's a good sign. But if you get caught up in that whirlwind of numbers and comparison with other shows, and, you know, you'll see them in Facebook groups where you're happy with your 10 listens you got, and somebody walks into Facebook and goes, I've got a million listens in 5 minutes. You're like, well, come on. That's not fair.
Right.
I might as well just give up, right? Yeah, just compare yourself to yourself. It's kind of like sports, like golf, I guess. You want your next golf game to be better than the last. You want to do better. I mini putt really well. So I want to get that hole in one once in a while. That makes me feel good.
Yes.
But I'm not going to compare myself to Tiger Woods.
Right.
Why? Right? That's pointless. and he's not comparing himself to me either. So there you go. I'm not a threat. So amazing. So we're going to jump into AI and some of the tools we're using, some of the tools we love, some of the tools we're not so fond of. In brief, just kind of as we open up the topic, what is your thoughts about AI in general, good and bad? What do you think?
I think it's good. I understand some of the concerns that are out there, but I don't fear AI taking over the world. And part of my background in education was in computer science and programming. And so I do know that everything that's out there is driven by human. So they're only capable of doing what they've been told that they can do. But there's some of the ways that I've used it. If you go back and look at it, you still need the human element as part of it. But I think for me, it's like that virtual assistant that I use. It's a sounding board for brainstorming. I use it more and more every week, in different capacities. But I am finding that as a solo podcaster, I don't have a team behind me working on anything. This past week, for the first time, I actually meet my deadlines on it. That's part of what I wanted to talk about today is how we can use these tools to help us become more efficient in what we're doing. This is still your voice that's coming out there, and finding ways to use the tools to help just help your voice be a little bit stronger.
Yeah. What tool have you fallen in love with right now? What are you using?
Believe it or not, the free version of Chat, I'm sampling different ones, but that's the one that I keep coming back to the most.
Okay. I'm using the same one. What are you using it for?
I am, the part I'm the most excited about right now is I don't know about you. Now I edit video and audio on mine. So the video is a huge time consumer for me. I'm hosting a podcast. I have a guest podcast. So I'm interviewing guests every episode. I want to make sure that I'm giving my guests the best light. And so I want to edit so that I'm taking out if there's any funny little pieces there, or if we had a little stutter in what we were talking about, so the listener can hear it flow better. But I also don't want to make my guests look bad through the video part. But that just takes so much time to do. So what I've been doing recently is I'm taking the transcript from the episode, and actually on this one, I'm also using Descript. So Chat and Descript together on this. So I'm downloading the audio and extracting that out of the recording, cutting out the chatter at the beginning and at the end, not really the part that I'm going to use for the final piece anyway, so I can get some of the time out of it. And then printing out the transcript from Descript. And then I'm using that to listen through with Audacity. So you have to. So if you're just starting and you don't know all these names, we'll have to fill in all that, I guess. And what I'm finding on Descript, sometimes there'll be like a whole sentence missing, so I'll have to pause it and write all that in, and then keep going. So now my transcript's ready for the end. But as I do that, I'm marking if this is a good section to make as a YouTube Shorts to go along with the video, or maybe something I'm going to use on social media. So as I'm going through, I'm making all those marks. So then at the end, then I have my transcript marked. I know when I go back to the video editing exactly where I'm deleting sections, where I need to add some B-roll to it, things like that. So it's saved me hours of time just by downloading the transcript and then going through that. And then I'll feed that transcript into ChatGPT, and I'll ask different questions to do that. So are you doing anything like this before I go into major detail like what I'm doing with chat?
Yeah. So for me and ChatGPT, what I like to do is I like to take a description of my ideal listener and include that in my in my searches and in my queries, so that my ChatGPT is talking to my ideal audience member. So I kind of give them the parameters of who I'm talking to as a kind of a guide, so that when they give me back the feedback, they're giving it back to that specific person.
Right.
So all that work I do to figure out who I'm talking to, I give that as part of my feed to ChatGPT. And that was a great suggestion from another podcaster I heard. And I'm like, I love that idea. Yeah. So that's part of the way I approach it. What I like to do is so I want to redefine AI, those two letters, artificial intelligence. It's kind of an oxymoron. It's not really that intelligent. But anyways, I'd rather say, how about assisted information?
Yeah. I like
as
that.
an AI definition. And so it gives you a little bit of different perspective, because everyone's afraid of the big computer taking over the world, blah, blah, blah.
We've seen the movies.
We've seen the movies, The Matrix, and we've seen Arnold and everything talk about the world being taken over.
Right.
So if we put it into terms then of assisted information, it becomes an assistant to us and not an employee.
Right.
So I'd rather not give my work to a tool and have it do the work for me as if an employee was doing it. But I'd love to partner with these tools to make my podcast and my content better. So if I'm thinking of 4 ways to grow my audience as a podcaster, assisted information, AI, could give me a few more tips that I didn't think about, because I'm only me and I only know what I know.
Right.
And it could spark me to go, wait a minute, my 4 should be 5 because I missed this one. And how did I miss that?
Right.
Wow. I'm going to take that, and I'm not just going to copy paste and give it to the world as my idea, because it wasn't my idea, but it sparks something for me to do more research and maybe add that 5th point to my 4 that I would have totally forgotten about or never acknowledged. And in the same point, I just learned something as a podcaster. So now I'm learning, and I get to share what I'm learning with you. So use AI assisted information, that's what I'm calling it, and maybe use that as a way to make your content better. Because again, we only know what we know.
Right.
And if you don't read a book on the subject, if you don't do exhaustive research on Google, and you do all these things, again, we're one person doing everything. If you can get one more tip or one more suggestion from assisted information, AI, then that might make your content better. And that's kind of how I approach it.
Are you using ChatGPT for 4.0?
Free, the free one.
So 3.5. So that's the one that I think right now it's September of 21, I think is the limit of its knowledge. Yeah. And I thought the other day, because I'm working on an ebook, and I wanted to get some background information that I wasn't sure if I was on the right track or not. So we were having a virtual discussion for a while working. And so I asked the question that, what the quality of information was, and pretty honest with me as far as what the limitations were. And so I asked, well, can you cite the resources that you're using from before 21 to compile this information? And so in the answer, it gave me inline citations, and it came back with, no, this is just an example of what a resource might look like. So it's like, all right, so I'm going to fact check anyway, but it was interesting that had I not asked that, I might have assumed that these were actual websites that it had gone to, because they sounded very, very legitimate for the topic that I was looking for. But they weren't the peer-reviewed sites that they actually were listed as.
Well, yeah, if AI gives you a website, we know everything on the internet is true. So as long as we have a website link, we're good, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So I found it interesting, but it did help though, because it helped me kind of organize. But I will feed the transcript in, and I'll ask for suggestions for titles. Um, I'm not very good at writing hooks. I need to figure this out more. And I throw out a lot of what's given but the structure of what it's giving me. So it's
Right.
so I like that side of it. I like your tag of assisted information, because information's coming, yes, but part of it, and it may not be research information, it might be just like structure, organization, things like that. And like you're
Mhm.
saying, describing the ideal listener, I hadn't thought about that. That's a fantastic way of using it.
Yeah, it just gives another filter, more information for AI to use. And if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh gosh, I don't even want to try AI," well, I have a thing to just to remind you. When you go in your email in Google or whatever you use for an email, and you start typing and you misspell a word, do you notice that little red line that underlines your misspelled word? Welcome to AI.
Right.
You've been using it for a long time and you haven't been offended so far. It helps you with your spelling because I have no idea what you just typed and I have no idea what that word is. I've never heard of it. But that underline that shows up in your document, yeah. So you're pretty familiar with AI and you've been using it for a long time. So just relax.
Yeah.
There's some great tools out there that can help you. And again, as a new podcaster without a team of 20 and a budget and, $10,000 per episode and 30 writers behind you, we're doing this all ourselves.
Right.
So anything that speeds up our time, anything that gives us a tool, an advantage, because again, we're doing this on our own.
Right.
So leverage those tools.
Yeah, and not only just the spell check, but if you're using Siri, or if you're using Alexa, or if you're using, I mean, these are all AI generated. If you're searching for something on Google, it's using that information it's no different than what ChatGPT is doing. It's just giving you more information whenever you ask Chat. And there are a lot of different ones that are out there that I'm hearing about. So I'm trying some of the trials of a few to see, but at this point, I'm not ready to pay for them other than Descript.
Right.
I do. Descript has a free section of it, but I'm uploading more than what I can get on the free. So I do pay monthly on that one. But I'm seeing some editors are starting to bring it in now too, so that it may be part of the package that you have already. So if you're listening, if you're using some of these other tools, look and see if they have some sample ones. I record on Riverside, and I noticed that they're starting to use it where I can download like suggested segments from it that could be shorts, but at least it gives me an idea of where to start looking in my transcript. So it is helping some, I guess, but it's nothing that I could just cut and paste and use what they're giving me. They're kind of interesting.
Nice. From your okay, what do you think about the whole idea? I've heard a lot of talk in podcasting realms around the fact that maybe AI is pulling information from sources without crediting the source, and that would be in some terms plagiarism, in the fact that it's giving you content for those people who copy paste content and claim it as their own. That's a different topic. But the fact that you may be pulling in somebody else's information that you really don't own and then just claiming it as your own. How do you feel about that?
I think if we're putting anything out that we've used AI with, we need to fact check what's there.
Yeah.
And whenever we find the resource where that fact is being confirmed from, we need to cite that source.
Yeah.
Because we're not, as you say, we're not doing the research. This is our assistant that's coming in and doing it with us. But if I plant my name on something and say I did all this myself, and half of it's true and half is false, now I've given misinformation or disinformation, whatever our keyword is that has been coming up over the last few years. But we also, if I've created something, I want recognition that it was my intellectual property that was used. And so,
Right.
so I need to respect other creators who have put that together ahead of me, that have provided that information for me. So yeah, no, I would strongly recommend that everyone go through and find the resources that are there. And you can do that. I mean, even if you take what it gives you right away, you could put phrases in and search for that. You're going to get a hit if it came from anywhere. with possible sources that would be there.
Nice. I love that. That's a great example. Any tools that you tried and you said, no, not for me?
I think about that one. There were a couple of online ones. I'm trying to think the names of any of them, where you fed in the information and it would break your content again with video, because I do a lot with video. It would break your video into shorts, and I would find that they're really like it would have the same section over and over again, but I didn't feel like it was worth paying for that because I wasn't really going to get much out of it. It had
Right.
nice bells and whistles where you could put like captions on it and titles and things, but the version, at least that I was trying out, wasn't adept at really figuring out what the content was. And maybe my topics that I'm covering are harder for it to figure out, but it's not, if I uploaded any of their recommendations, it would not get any traction at all because there was nothing in it.
Yeah.
It would be like a transition or we'd be laughing over something, but nothing was said. And that would be the section. It's like, that served no purpose at all.
Yeah. And I guess like I was on a podcast episode as a guest recently, great podcast about dads. And I get to share my dad's story. It was really fun. And I have a podcast called Dad Space. So I was kind of going on to promote my show, but I was on talking about my dad journey. And when I got the recording back from the host, I can tell they were using an AI tool, probably Descript, but what they had done is they kind of went a little too far with the editing with the tool, and they removed every space from me talking. And I sounded like a distracted squirrel because I didn't have a single break in my voice. Right. And I played it for my wife and she's like, what the heck is that? You don't sound like that. And it was just kind of like if you could snap your fingers in a regular kind of, it was like clip, 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 the whole thing. There's no break. And as a listener, my anxiety level was going up notches because I'm like, when do I get a chance to breathe as a listener? I'm like, because it just kept going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And there was no break. And I'm like, in our humanness, we have cadence. We have a gallop to our voice. We have thoughtful breaks. We slow down. We speed up. And this just went straight across the board. And I sounded like a computer. And so what I did was because I was going to re-release that episode on my show, but I couldn't do it with that. So what I did is I actually took the episode, put it back into Audacity. I took silence. I copied the section of silence and I inserted it in between where I would normally speak. Good idea. And I took the episode from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, kind of 25 minutes, by adding in silence to give me that little rest. Right. Because I found that as a listener, we need time to process what's happening and what's being said. Yeah. And if there's no breaks, we're like, it's kind of like a pebble skipping across the water. You're just catching little parts of what's being said. You're not actually soaking it in. So I want to give my audience the chance to breathe and go, okay, all right, we just talked about that. Okay, I got it. And now, new topic, right? And I feel like I wanted the audience to kind of see the difference. So I play both. I played them back to back so you could hear the difference. And I wanted you to kind of, if you do use these tools, great. I'm not saying don't use tools, but if you use them, think about your listener at the end of the day and what is the listening experience like for your listener so that they get what you're doing. You don't give them anxiety. You are giving them a human-like podcast to listen to, because I can tell you in about a minute or two of listening to an episode who's using a tool and who's not using a tool. Right. And if 90% of podcasts go to that feeling of constant information, bang, 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 no silence, keep going, you're gonna stand out as a podcaster if you are having a conversation natural. Like this. Right. You have time for each other. You're not talking over each other. There's breaks, there's silence, there's flow, there's cadence, and there's slowing down like I'm doing right now. That's going to help because your audience is going to have a chance to keep with you and stay in step with you instead of running behind you.
And you bring a good point in there because you're right. I'd forgotten. It does have it where you can take out the pauses. I will remove, like when I'm in Audacity, if we have a long section,
Yeah.
then I will remove part of that. But I'm like you. I don't want the whole thing out. It needs to be a breath in there. And but on the other side, for my intro, because I'm trying to get you into the topic, I will take it out of mine, and I talk fast normally. So
Hmm.
you're zooming right in at the beginning, and then it slows down the pace once we get into the actual content that's there. But I'm talking maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then we're into it. So it isn't a long time of that.
Yeah.
But the other thing that Descript will do is you have the option to take the ums and the ahs out. And I wouldn't do that. I would leave them all in there because that's part of normal speech. And unless you have a
Right.
rehearsed speech, anyone that you talk to is going to have some type of placeholder as they're thinking that's in there. It,
Yeah.
I would
It's
like to
common.
remove my ums, but I don't worry about the ums or the so. So is my big one. I start so many of my sentences whenever I'm listening through. I'm catching all are you the same?
Mm-hmm.
And I do stutter. As the word that apparently is a big stuttering word for me because I'll see like 4 or 5 that's in a row when I'm looking at my transcript. But
There you
I
go.
just leave them in there because it's who I am. It's how I speak. So so that I think it makes you, especially when someone's only listening to the audio, all they have to go by to get to know you is who you are, who your voice is. And if we're pretending to be somebody different by taking all those pieces out, it's not truly who we are. So we might as well be ourselves and reflect who we are through our speech.
Great tip. And I heard another podcaster say there's this dinner table filter that we should have as podcasters. Are you talking on your podcast as a podcast host the same way you would talk around the dinner table with your friends and family?
Good point.
Or are you a different person on the microphone? So would you say to your family, "Hi, everybody,
Right.
welcome to the show. Can you
I'm
pass the
picturing
salt and
that.
sugar? Hey, I like some more turkey." Who talks like that,
Yeah.
right? We're not like that. That's not, so don't put on this facade, maybe out of nervousness or insecurity or fear of being judged, that you hide behind this facade in your
Right.
podcast. If I walked up to you, Tonya, at a podcast event, and you spun around and you started talking to me totally different than you do on the show, I'd be like, can I talk to Tonya? Like, where is
Yeah.
she?
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
who are you? I don't know who you are. So we don't have to have the Sunday
Right.
sounds to our voice.
Think about
We
how
just need to
irritating
be,
that would be if that's how somebody was all the
oh,
time.
right? Oh, can you turn that down a little
Right.
bit? So there's natural things. I listen to some of my favorite shows and I hear, it's funny, there's one of the shows I listen to and the host says that he says a certain word a lot, but then never acknowledges the facts that he says things like that. He says that probably 40 times an episode, but he talks about the fact that he says something else too often.
Interesting.
And I'm like, no. You say things like that too much.
I have a
Like,
list.
it's a comma.
It isn't just
It's a
one
comma,
word.
right?
I have a list. And the more I
Right?
edit, especially printing out the
Mhm.
transcript now and then listening through it, it's like I just laugh as I'm going through it because I know it's going to be in there. And whenever I do the final, because I take the transcript and I actually put it on the website so you can read the full transcript. So
Good.
I try to add some grammatical punctuation in there.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. And again, if you're new to podcasting, you haven't even recorded a couple episodes, you're super nervous.
Oh
You're like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
okay, I got to do all the things. Tanya's on the screen. Did I hit record? Yeah, I hit record. Oh, I've got to ask a question. I didn't hear her answer. I have no idea what she just said. Question number 2, Tonya. And you're trying to do all these things spinning on your desk, and you're like, an email just popped up. What's that? Oh,
Am I
can't read that. I'm
smiling? Am I
recording.
looking at the camera?
Where's the camera? What am I looking at? Right? So you're doing all these things and you almost forget that you're podcasting. So
Yeah.
take a break. The biggest thing I would like to encourage everyone, Tonya, is to practice.
Yes. Yes.
I don't understand why everyone feels that episode 1 has to be recorded now and released today. How many times have you tried this?
Right.
Did you practice with your recording software before you had a guest come on? No. Maybe you should practice with somebody. Get mom on the phone and have her sign in and just talk to her and play with the buttons before you interview the amazing author that's coming to you next week. You should practice. You should record some episodes and just throw them away. Because how are you going to get better
Right.
than by not practicing.
So I'm going to give you an example here. So before I started, I was using Zoom at the beginning, and so I put my phone in the kitchen and logged it into Zoom, and I logged in from the other room from my computer, and I had several interviews with myself and anyone that might have walked by. I think the cat walked by at one point. But I practiced recording by having two inputs with it. I checked the audio. I think I turned on the TV and put it in front of the TV at one point so I could check the video, because I didn't want to do all this in front of my family. I was going to figure this out on my own. And then I had a family member call in, and then we tried that. I'm nervous. No matter how many times you do this, you're still going to be nervous the first few episodes even. But my husband and I are doing this together. And so now you don't see him behind the scenes. You'll see him whenever we do a live tour somewhere. Like we were at the state fair last year for their sensory friendly event, and we're interviewing some families that had come to that. So he and my daughter were there with me. But most of the time you're not going to see Steve. In the first episode, though, we decided to do this together because we wanted to show who he was. He didn't want to practice. So we turn on. So I'm like at the last minute, because we had a certain time frame we had to work in, because he had a break from work and had to go back to work. So I'm like fixing tripods for the lighting, trying to get the microphone right. And then he didn't even want to look at the script ahead of time. And so I had like an outline. So then at the last minute, I'm finding this, what is it called? Whenever they have a prompter that I could put on the screen. Yeah. So I could kind of roll that up. So we look so awkward doing this, but I released it because it's where we started from. And I think it's okay because now every week people are still hitting episode 1, and I don't know how many are still going to 2 from there. But because I don't know about you, but whenever I want to hear a new podcast, I go back and I want to know the origin story. So I go back and listen to number 1 and their trailer just to get an idea of what their goal was starting. And then I'll listen to newer ones. And so if anyone's doing that, please listen past episode 1 because it's very different after that.
We're going to put a link to episode 1 in the show notes. Right. Episode 1 is going to be in the show notes. I don't care.
I mean, it tells what we're trying to do. So the information is good, but it's just, we didn't rehearse it together. We didn't try. And I love my husband. We've been married 35 years. But trying to do this, it was like we were performing. And we shouldn't have been performing. We should have just been relaxed and talking. But and part of the reason why we had to do this, because I had nowhere in the house clean enough to have a camera on us with it behind.
Yeah. If you only knew it was outside of the view of our cameras at Podcasters, you'd be like, oh my gosh.
I have a nice blue curtain behind me right now. So.
It's the whole Wizard of Oz thing. Yes. You don't want to see behind the curtain. No. You don't want to go there.
I'm sitting in a storage room.
I love it.
Practice is good, just to sum that part up. But wherever you start and keep on going from there, because it is going to get better.
It is. And the only way to get better is to start.
Right. And that has nothing to do with AI.
Yeah, exactly. You're totally on a tangent.
Right. Totally. That's okay.
Yeah.
Totally unscripted
here.
So,
yes. So, okay, let's redefine AI from artificial intelligence to assisted information.
Absolutely.
I just kind of think that feels a little better. It takes a little bit of the computer nerdy out of the topic. But yeah, so ChatGPT is a great one. I've tried some online ones as well. My problem is the cost for all these amazing things and how fast they're coming. If I'm going to sign up, I'm not going to sign up for a year of anything, to be honest, because tomorrow there's going to be 12 new things. So one thing I find is because you can try stuff for free, with the amount of episodes I have going out into the world, there's no way I can leverage these tools to the extent that I could use them for the amount of podcasts that I'm making. I can do one a month. I have 40 to 50 episodes a month from my 7 shows going out into the world.
Right.
So to have one episode that I can do a month with that tool.
Yeah.
Or I have 40 to 50 episodes a month, and that tool can't handle that quantity without the pro version.
Right.
And I'm just a guy who's working full time and doing this on my days off. So my wife would not be a fan of me spending that much money on a tool that could save me this much time.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in the world, and it's hard. I'm in the world of doing it the old school way by myself, and then leveraging the tools where they make sense. And I'm kind of stuck there. And I feel like I have one foot on one side, one foot on the other. And I don't know which way to go, but I'm going to try as much as I can and take in information from people like you using the tool and how to use it better and how to leverage it for me. And there's going to be tools that work for me, and there's going to be tools that don't. So
Right.
feel free to try, go to YouTube University, watch people play with it, get those verses where they do this tool versus this tool and listen to them, compare them. And that might save you a lot of money just by watching those.
I agree. And a lot of them have a trial that you kind of rotate through which ones you're trying out. And you may be able to get a little bit of time, especially if you're just starting out. And like I said, for Descript, I did make that choice just because I saw how it was saving me enough money on that.
Good.
But
Good.
but if I find something better, I'll drop that one and go on to another. And this is not being sponsored. I'm not, this is just,
Yeah.
I've just tried out that particular one. If any of your listeners have one that they've tried that works better than that, I'd love to know what they're finding that's using. If they can send you some information of what's working for them, I think it'd be a good way to be able to share this. Other people are learning, especially if there are any free ones out there like ChatGPT. I mean, I use that so much just because it's free. Others out there, I'd love to know what they are too.
It's amazing. And we have a great resource as far as the listening audience that is out there. They send feedback all the time. howtopodcast.ca. There's a little speak pipe. You can leave a recording and say what your name of your podcast is, please, and promote your podcast. But answer Tonya's question. What kind of AI tools are you using and how are they working for you? You can always leave that message and we'll then put it back in the podcast and insert it as well.
Excellent.
So people can hear about you and your show. Yeah. Tonya, I want to keep you for super long, but I know that you have more topics to talk about than we have time right at the moment. You will come back, right, to have more conversations around some of the other things?
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
Because that makes me happy as well. And I love coming into contact with another great podcast host and just trading stories. And again, trying to help the person that's listening to encourage them to start their show. So before we go, again, I want you to plug. But after you plug, I would love for you to talk directly. I'm going to turn the podcast over to you. Talk directly to the person listening that's just starting a show. They're looking for advice from you. What would you say to somebody new?
Okay, so just a reminder there, the podcast that I host is the Water Prairie Chronicles, created for parents of children with disabilities. And we'd love to have you come try us out. If that is something that's of interest to your family or a need that you may have or someone that shoot an email to me, let us know how we can help you the best. And you can find us on any of the audio platforms under the Water Prairie Chronicles, and we're on social media under Water Prairie, except for Instagram is water.prairie because we weren't able to get Water Prairie on that one. so we have all the others there. But as far as starting a podcast, I think the biggest thing is just keeping your why focus. Why is it that you want to do this? What is your drive? What do you have to share? And believing in yourself and the message that you have to share, and just keeping it going. Like we started out with saying, don't worry about the numbers starting out. Just focus on what is it that you're interested in. Why are you trying to do this? And keep moving forward one step. You're going to get better as you go. The more practice that you put into this, and have fun with it too. Because as you said earlier, you're meeting people around the world, literally around the world. And you're also going to find that you form these relationships. You're not just meeting someone for the first time. You're joining them as part of what your community is. Dave and I would not have met had we not been podcasters. So this is a perfect example right here. Thank you. I've really had fun with this too. So I'm looking forward to chatting more with you on other topics that we've already tossed around too.
Just to reinforce the why thing and why the why is so important. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
If you were, let's put it into this context, and it sounds absurd when you hear me start to talk like this, but if you're being chased by a dog through backyards and you're trying to get away from this dog and you're carrying a heavy bag, you get to this fence in front of you. you have two choices. You can throw the bag over the fence and then climb over the fence, or you can try to climb over the fence while holding the bag. The dog is running behind you. So I would suggest you throw the bag over the fence first, and then you climb the fence. So in that sense, you're putting the bag first, and then you. And in your podcast world, take your why and always put it ahead of you. No matter what obstacle comes up towards you, put it over the fence first, and then you go over the fence. Don't drag the bag behind you. Don't drag your why behind you. Always put it ahead of you. So no matter what obstacle you face, time, money, AI, glitches in your recording, whatever's happening, always put your why first, which is your audience, which is why you're doing what you're doing. Put that over the fence, then get over the fence and keep going. Get over your hurdles. You can do this. You can start a show. Tonya did it. I did it. And it can happen for you. Just don't forget your why. That work?
It works. It works.
Awesome. Everyone go check out all the information for Tonya and her show. Again, a great show to share with friends and family as well who would be interested in Tonya's content. Highly shareable, highly helpful podcast that can help so many. And it comes from a good place, which is important. So support Tonya. Let her know that you heard her here on the podcast. And we'll have you back, right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.